for a person to say, I'm going to actually tackle this, I'm going to do whatever it takes to do that. I want to be able to inspire other people to do that and show other people how.
Welcome to the Personal Finance for PhDs podcast, a higher education in personal finance. I'm your host, Emily Roberts. This is Season 3, Episode 2, and today my guest is Dr. Shana Green, a postdoc at the CDC, side hustler extraordinaire, and YouTuber at The Wealth Vibe. Shana was in over $100,000 of debt when she finished her PhD, and she knew her postdoc salary wasn't enough to pay it off as fast as she wanted to. That's when she started side hustling, both in ways that used her PhD and ways that didn't. She's now halfway through her debt repayment journey. In this episode, she shares with us the lessons she's learned about side hustling to achieve an enormous financial goal. Without further ado, here's my interview with Dr. Shana Green. So welcome. I am so delighted to have joining me on the podcast today, Dr. Shana Green, who has this wonderful YouTube channel called The Wealth Vibe that you all should definitely go and check out as soon as possible. I've been looking forward to this interview ever since she volunteered to be a guest on the podcast, which if you want to do, you can go to PFforPhDs.com/podcast. And there is a form there that you can fill out. But Shana volunteered there, and she has this, like I said, fantastic YouTube channel. And I've just been really looking forward to talking with her about her personal finance journey, which involves a lot of debt and a lot of side hustling, which is so exciting. So Shana, will you please take a moment to introduce yourself to us, tell us, your educational history and kind of what got you to the side hustling part of your journey?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'm thankful that you had me on today, and I hope that I can share some really great information to your audience. So just a little bit about me. I am a Gates Millennium Scholar, and the Gates Millennium Scholarship Program, they fund pretty much 100% of your education, especially for undergrad. And then when you go into your graduate degrees, there is a cap. So that was really helpful to me. I went to Howard University and got a Bachelor's of Arts degree in anthropology, and they paid for that 100%. But then I went on to get a Master's of Public Health at Columbia University, and they didn't quite cover as much as I needed to be covered. And so it did cover about 100% of the tuition, but when it came to the additional cost of attendance for, meals and rent and stuff like that, the scholarship no longer covered as much as I needed it to cover. And so I had to take out student loans. And then I went on to the University of South Florida, and I got a PhD in public health. And at that time, the scholarship was covering all I needed for my expenses related to getting my PhD. However, I spent 5 years in the program, and the Gates Millennium Scholar Program is only a 10-year program, so they'll pay for 10 years of education. So since I did 4 years for undergrad, 2 years for master's, I only had 4 years left for the PhD program. And so I had 1 year where I had to find additional funding for myself. And I was able to find some funding, but not quite enough of what I needed, so I had to take out a little bit of loans then too. But since I've graduated in 2017 with my PhD in public health, I have been at the Centers for Disease Control, and up until today, actually until yesterday, I was a postdoc at the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, and I was working on HIV surveillance. But I actually got a new position that I'll be starting in 2 weeks, where I'll be a contractor also with the CDC doing epidemiology on a maternal mortality surveillance project. And so that's really my journey towards kind of racking up some debt. I did get most of my debt from my education, but I had car loans and IRS bills and other debts as well that racked up to be a lot of money that I had to tackle once I was no longer in school and had to, pay for everything on my own.
Yeah. So do you mind sharing with us what the total of that debt was kind of at the point when you were like at the turnaround point when you finished your PhD?
Yeah, so I actually started to be aware of it even before I graduated. And it was at some point I went on to Credit Karma and I went on their website and I was looking at the debt that they said that I had. And I literally started crying because at that time I think I had like $70,000 in debt. And I started crying and I was like, how am I going to survive? Like, how am I going to do this? And then actually, by the time I graduated with my PhD, I had $108,000 in debt. So I would say about 56,000 of that right now is from student loans. And I probably only took out maybe like almost $40,000 from student loans. But over the years, I've accrued about 10, maybe 12,000 or so, maybe even more in interest. And so I'm sitting at $56,000 in interest in student loans. And then I had a car. I have a car that I had debt with. Had IRS debt that was around like a little less than $2,000. I had some medical bills. What else? Credit cards. You can't forget the credit cards. I had like one credit card that had like $14,000 or $15,000 of debt, and then another one that had $3,000. And so that's all the debt that I had. And although I didn't have to go into repayment with my student loans once I graduated and went to my postdoc because I was able to do a graduate fellowship deferment, I still wanted to tackle, the debt that I had because I did have to pay, my credit cards, my car, the IRS, and all the other debt that I had. And just knowing that eventually I would have to start paying my student loans, I wanted to start knocking down some of the debt that I actually needed to pay. So right now I have about $63,000 in debt remaining. So I have paid off the credit cards. I paid off the IRS bill that I had before. I paid off the medical bills. I'm very close to paying off my car. I think I'm going to be able to pay it off by the end of the month. And then all I'll have is my student loans.
That is incredible. I mean, to